The night my mother-in-law grabbed my wrist so hard it left a mark, I thought she was losing her mind. I almost walked out of that house and never came back. I wish more than anything that I had stopped and listened to what she was trying to tell me. My name is Amber. I'm 32 years old, and until about 8 months ago, I thought I had the kind of life people post about when they want you to feel bad about yours. Good job, nice apartment, a husband who remembered my coffee order without being asked. His name was Joel. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party in Austin when I was 26, and he was the kind of person who made you feel like the only person in a crowded room, not in a performative way, just genuinely, quietly attentive. I fell in love with him slowly, and then all at once, the way it always happens with the ones that actually matter. We got married 3 years later in a small ceremony outside San Antonio. Wildflowers, string lights, my grandmother crying in the front row. It was everything I wanted. What I didn't fully understand yet was that marrying Joel also meant becoming part of his family. And his family was complicated in ways that took me years to fully see. His mother had been sick for a long time. Not dramatically sick, not the kind of sick that gets diagnosed in a single moment and changes everything overnight. She had a degenerative joint condition that had slowly taken her mobility over the course of about a decade. By the time Joel and I got married, she was using a walker. A year later, it was a wheelchair most days. She lived alone in a house in Round Rock about 40 minutes from us, and she was fiercely, sometimes frustratingly, independent. His older sister had always been the one in the family who swooped in. Her name was Courtney. She was 5 years older than Joel, sharp, put together, the kind of woman who sends color coded group texts and shows up to everything 30 minutes early. She had been managing their mother's finances for years, helping pay bills, coordinating doctor appointments, making sure the house stayed in order. She told everyone she didn't mind. She said it was just what family did. I believed her for a long time. When Joe's mother got worse 2 winters ago, it became clear she couldn't keep living alone. Joel and I talked about it for weeks. We looked at assisted living facilities, at home care options, at costs that made my stomach drop. Eventually, we offered to have her move in with us. We had a spare room. I worked from home 3 days a week and could help during the day. It made sense on paper, and I genuinely wanted to help. She was kind to me. She called me her daughter without the in law part, and that meant more than I ever told her. Courtney took over the transition, which I was grateful for at the time. She arranged the movers, transferred the prescriptions, set up the medical equipment, all of it. She came over several times a week in the beginning, sometimes staying for dinner, sometimes staying so late I'd fall asleep on the couch and wake up to find her still at the kitchen table, going through paperwork she said was related to their mother's insurance and Medicare coverage. She brought food sometimes. That was the thing I kept coming back to later. She had always brought food. Her specialty was this chicken and rice dish she claimed was their grandmother's recipe. Rich, herby, slow cooked. Joel's mother lit up every time Courtney made it. She said it tasted like childhood. She said Courtney was the only one who got the seasoning right. I would watch them eat together and feel genuinely warm about it. Grateful even. Courtney was filling a role I wasn't sure I could fill, and she never made me feel inadequate for it. At least, not directly. I did notice things though. Small things I talked myself out of. Joel's mother had good days and bad days, which was expected. But there were stretches where her bad days clustered together in a way that didn't quite track with what her doctors were saying. She'd have a week of improvement, then 3 days where she could barely hold a conversation. I mentioned it to her doctor at one appointment, and she adjusted some of her medications. I mentioned it to Joel, and he said he thought it was just the natural progression of the condition. I mentioned it once carefully to Courtney, and she looked at me with this patient, tired expression and said, I know it's hard to watch, but this is what it looks like. You'll get used to it. I got used to it. I stopped asking. Then something happened that I can't explain away as coincidence, and I've tried. Lord knows I've tried. It was a Tuesday in March. Courtney had come by that afternoon while I was on a work call, and she dropped off a container of that chicken dish. She chatted with Joel's mother for about an hour, then left before I finished my call. I came downstairs to find the container on the counter with a sticky note that said, reheat on the stove. Low heat, don't microwave it or the texture gets weird. Very Courtney, instructions for everything. Dinner that night was quiet. Joel was traveling for work, just an overnight trip to Dallas, so it was just his mother and me. We reheated the chicken, set the table, and I was reaching for my fork when she put her hand over mine. I looked up. Her eyes were different, alert in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. Urgent. "Don't eat that," she said. I laughed a little, reflexively, the way you do when something makes no sense. "What? Not tonight." Her voice was low, steady. "Please, just not tonight." Her voice was low, steady. "Please, just not tonight. Are you okay?" "What's wrong?" She didn't answer right away. She was looking at the food like it had done something to her personally. Then she looked back at me and said, "I need you to look at something on my phone. I've been trying to figure out how to show you for 2 weeks." She had an old Samsung she mostly used for phone calls and the occasional Facebook scroll. She handed it to me and told me to go to her photos. I found a folder she'd labeled with my name. Inside was screenshots, bank statements, wire transfers. I didn't understand what I was looking at immediately. The amounts were significant. Transfers going out of an account I didn't recognize, dated over the past 18 months. I scrolled, and my brain kept trying to find the innocent explanation. Business account, investment account, something I was missing. Then I saw the destination account. I knew that account number. It was on the paperwork Joel and I had reviewed when Courtney set up the power of attorney 2 years ago. My hands went cold. "She has full access," his mother said, watching my face. "She set it up when I was having a bad spell last year. I thought it was just for emergencies, for the medical bills." Her voice cracked slightly, just slightly. "I didn't know she was moving money out. Not until my friend from church helped me check my accounts last month." I looked up from the phone. "How much?" she told me. It was more than I'm going to put a number to here, but enough to wipe out most of what she'd saved over 40 years of working. Enough that it physically hurt to hear. I sat there for a long moment, not saying anything. "I didn't know how to tell Joel," she said. "I didn't want to be the one to do that to him. And I wasn't sure I understood it right. I kept hoping there was an explanation." She paused. "But then I started thinking about the bad weeks, about how I feel after I eat her food sometimes. Heavy, foggy, like I can't think straight." The room tilted slightly. "She's been coming here a long time," his mother said. "And I've been getting worse. I want to be careful about what I say here because I know how it sounds. I know that correlation isn't causation. I know that her condition was already progressing before any of this. But I also know what I did next and what we found, and I can't unknow it. I didn't touch the food. I covered it carefully and put it in the back of the refrigerator and texted Joel without telling him why, just asking him to call me when he landed. Then I sat with his mother for 2 hours and let her talk. She told me things she'd been holding for months. The way Courtney had gradually started discouraging other family members from visiting, framing it as concern for her energy levels. The way certain medications had been misplaced or run out earlier than they should have. The way Courtney had started making comments about long-term care facilities, not cruelly, but persistently. Planting a seed. When Joel called, I told him to come home. He was quiet on the drive back, the kind of quiet that sits in a person's chest and doesn't move. I told him everything in our kitchen while his mother rested. I watched his face go through things I don't have words for. Disbelief. Grief. Anger so contained it scared me more than if he'd raised his voice. He called a family friend who was an attorney. That same night, the food in the container was sent to a lab. I won't go into the details of how we arranged that, but we had connections through someone Joel worked with, and we made it happen quietly. The results came back 10 days later. There were sedatives in the food. Not a prescription amount, not something you take on purpose, something you'd add. I've said that out loud to myself maybe 100 times since then, and it still doesn't feel real. We didn't confront Courtney right away. The attorney advised against it while the financial investigation was still being documented. We had to sit across from her at a family dinner 2 weeks later and smile and make conversation. And I have never in my life had to work harder to keep my expression neutral. She brought dessert. We didn't eat it. Joel's mother moved her accounts. Quietly, with the attorney's help, the power of attorney was revoked. Documents were gathered, A report was filed with the Texas Attorney General's office, which has a specific unit for financial exploitation of elderly individuals, something I didn't know existed until I needed it. When the confrontation finally came, it was not what I imagined. I had pictured screaming, denial. I had pictured Courtney's careful composure shattering all at once. What actually happened was quieter and somehow worse. Joel called her and asked her to come over on a Saturday morning. He told her their mother wanted to see her. When she walked in, the attorney was there. When she saw him, she stopped moving, just stopped in the doorway, coat still on. She looked at Joel's mother, then at me, then at Joel. Her face didn't fall apart dramatically, it went still, like she'd been waiting for this. How long? Joel asked. She sat down. For a while, she didn't say anything. Then she started talking, and what came out was not an apology and not a justification. It was something more like a confession that had been waiting a long time to leave her. She talked about resentment that had built over years. She was the oldest. She had always been the responsible one, the one who handled things, the one who showed up. She had given up opportunities, relationships, versions of her life to take care of their mother while Joel built a career and fell in love and moved forward. And no one had ever asked her if she was okay with that. Everyone had just assumed. She said she hadn't planned the financial part in the beginning. She said she'd borrowed some money intending to pay it back, and then more time passed, and she kept moving the line of what was acceptable until she couldn't see it anymore. She did not explain the food. When Joel asked her directly, she looked at the floor and said she thought it would just slow things down. That if his mother was having more bad days, they would move her to a facility sooner. That it would be easier for who went unasked. We all knew the answer. The criminal case is ongoing. I'm not going to share details here that could affect it. What I can tell you is that the financial exploitation charges are serious, and the Attorney General's office took the case. Her access to all accounts has been permanently revoked. She does not come to our home. Joel's mother is doing better. Not miraculously, not completely, because her condition is real and it isn't going away. But in the months since Courtney stopped bringing food and Courtney stopped coming around, her bad weeks have become less frequent. She laughs more. She called me her daughter again last week, and this time I had to leave the room so she wouldn't see me cry. Joel and I have had hundreds of hard conversations since that Saturday morning. About his sister, about his grief, about what family means when it becomes something that can hurt you. He doesn't talk about her often. When he does, it's not with anger anymore. It's something quieter and harder to name. He told me once that the worst part wasn't what she did. The worst part was that he understood, at least partly, where it came from. That she'd been drowning and no one noticed because she kept showing up anyway. I think about that a lot. About how someone can be failing right in front of you while wearing the face of someone who has it together. What I keep coming back to when I try to make sense of all of it is this: his mother knew. She was sitting in a wheelchair, limited in almost every physical way, and she was paying attention. She noticed the patterns. She took screenshots she didn't fully understand yet. She saved them in a folder with my name on it and waited for the right moment. Because she trusted me and because she was protecting us both, the only way she could. She stopped me from eating that food before I even knew there was a reason to be stopped. The people who love you don't always have the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes they're sitting quietly, watching, waiting for the moment they can reach you. And the most important thing you can do is be the kind of person who puts down their fork and listens. I still think about that Tuesday night, the steam rising off the food, Joel's mother's hand over mine, thin wristed and deliberate. She couldn't stand without help. She needed someone to bring her water in the morning. And yet she was the one in that room who saw everything clearly. There's something I've had to sit with for a long time since then. Something uncomfortable. I had the same information she did. At least some of it. I saw Joel tense up around his sister sometimes. I noticed the bad weeks that didn't match what the doctors were saying. I felt the small wrongness of things and chose again and again to smooth it over, not because I was stupid, because it was easier, because I didn't want to be the woman who caused problems in her husband's family. Because Courtney showed up and smiled and brought food, and I told myself that meant something. His mother didn't have that luxury. She couldn't afford to look away. When you're dependent on the people around you, you learn to watch them more carefully than they watch themselves. She paid attention when I wasn't willing to. She saved those screenshots in a folder with my name on it and waited patiently for 2 weeks for the right moment to reach me. That takes a kind of quiet courage that I don't think gets named often enough. What Courtney did came from a real place, and that's the part that's hardest to dismiss. Years of showing up, of being the responsible one, of watching her own life narrow while she managed everyone else's. That resentment was earned in its own terrible way. But there's a fork in the road that everyone reaches eventually, when the weight of what you've carried starts to feel like a debt someone else owes you. The choice you make at that fork is the truest thing about you. She chose to collect, and the way she collected hurt people who had never asked her to sacrifice anything in the first place. I've thought a lot about what keeps a person from reaching that fork and taking the wrong path. I think it starts with honesty with yourself more than anyone else. Courtney was not honest about what she needed. She never said, "I'm drowning, I need help, I can't keep doing this alone." She kept performing competence until the performance became a kind of trap. If she had been honest, someone might have helped her. Instead, she built a story in her mind where she was owed, and that story gave her permission for things she couldn't have permitted otherwise. And then there's the matter of paying attention. His mother, sitting in a wheelchair with limited mobility and a body that was failing her, was sharper than anyone in that house because she refused to stop thinking. She didn't accept the easy explanation. She asked questions, she checked her accounts, she held onto information until she could use it. That kind of clear eyed persistence, the refusal to be made comfortable by convenient answers, is something I want to carry with me for the rest of my life. What I know now is that caring for someone is not just about logistics. It's not the meals and the appointments and the paperwork. It's about showing up with your whole attention and your whole honesty, even when it costs you something. Joel's mother did that for us. She did it from a wheelchair on a Tuesday night with a hand over mine and 3 words. The people who love you most are not always the ones who do the most. Sometimes they're the ones who, when it truly matters, refuse to let you pick up the fork.